So I think that's where we are, is that we're both in love with one another, in love with our relationship, but it's not the most important thing in our lives. And that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 88. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have our regular Wednesday episode.
Man, that was quite the surprise on Monday.
I know! We hope everyone enjoyed it, and now you get another episode this week. So today we have an interview with Eliza and Mark.
Yes,
and it's actually, you'll see, there's two parts to it, which we won't go into right this second, but...
well, maybe we should give them a warning about what the second part is. Not a warning, but a heads up. The second part is a follow-up to the first part, and it's a really good conversation about what happens when you're diagnosed with an STI.
Yes.
And so you're definitely going to want to stick around and listen to that because it's a really great conversation. And we really appreciate Mark and Eliza coming back on to talk about it.
Yeah. And their story in general is fascinating. We're so happy that they were willing to come on and share. So
yeah, it's a great sort of discussion. I mean, the underlying theme through the whole thing is sort of how different partners can fulfill different needs in your life. And it's a really, it's a great conversation, and we're super excited about it. One quick thing to mention is that we, as you can maybe tell, like the last maybe 10 or 12 episodes, we've been, like some episodes, the audio is way better than others, and it's not that it was ever terrible, other than what that one person on iTunes thought. But
are you a little offended?
I'm just taking notes. But we switched over from using Skype to Zoom, and we're figuring out what the best way to use that is. And so just give us a little bit of time here. We've got it pretty much figured out, and you should start hearing improvements.
Yes.
So
we always strive.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, we always strive to bring you the best audio quality, but we are limited once in a while.
Now, where we're going to be this week? We're leaving today.
Yes, we're leaving today. We're headed towards New York City, and we will be there on October 3rd for our first meet and greet.
That's tomorrow.
Yes, it is. Woo! So if you want to come meet us and hang out, go RSVP on our website. Also, we're doing a meet and greet in Boston on October 18th, and then again in Toronto on October 26th.
So we will see you there.
Yes, all information, details, RSVP information, all on our website under the events page. Go check it out. And
if you can't make it in person, we will be having 2 back-to-back Patreon Q&As, video Q&As, so you can call in and see Emma's lovely face.
And you.
And hear us talk to you about whatever questions you have. That will be October 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then again at 9 p.m. Pacific. So we're trying to pick up everybody this time.
Yes.
And I mean, I think at that point we should probably go talk to Mark and Eliza, and we need to wrap it up because we're got to go get our STD testing done right now.
Yes, we are. We're going to do that this morning. And if you want to save $10 on your panel, go use the link on our website, and you can use a service called STD Check. And we love it. It's super easy and fast. You just put the information online, go to your nearest LabCorp or Quest lab, donate your blood and urine, and then that's it. You get your results within, I think, 24 to 48 hours.
That's true.
So
it's super easy, and we're doing it this morning as we're also trying to move out across the country. So that's how simple it is.
That's true. Now let's go talk to Mark and Eliza. Liza and Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. We're really excited to be here.
Yeah, and you reached out to us via email and actually wrote us a very lengthy story. At least you did, Mark, which...
I don't do lengthy stories.
No, you did not. but it was amazing. We were actually reading it just about an hour ago in the car on the way over here. So reminding ourselves about what you said. So,
but we have to forget everything.
Start anew.
And start fresh here.
Yeah.
Well, for anybody who didn't read our email from you, do you two mind sharing a little bit about just brief background biography of who each of you are, and we'll go from there.
So I grew up in the Midwest, had a couple of years in Europe at different points growing up, and then after college I bounced out to California, flew hang gliders, rode motorcycles, waited tables and bushed dishes, tried to be an artist, failed, tried to write a screenplay, failed, came back to the Midwest, planned to get into art school again to try another shot at it because I'd failed the first time. And wound up getting involved with the Macintosh computer when it came along and fell into desktop publishing and then databases and then the web when it showed up, and just kept kind of teaching myself as things came along. And got married along the way, was married for about 15 years. Then that just kind of ended. No big blow up, just my wife fell out of love with me, and so after a year or so of like trying to see if we could make it work, nope, gave it up. Yeah. So after about 15 years of marriage, we just kind of had drifted apart and wound up getting divorced amicably, and I set off to start dating again at 50, and decided I wanted to do it better than I had when I was in my 20s, because I pretty much didn't date in my 20s. I didn't know how to do it. Was this geeky artist guy who did these strange things like hang gliding, and it was not working as far as getting relationships
getting
going.
Chicks?
Yeah, it was
hang
not good.
gliding didn't do it?
Hang gliding did not do it. Go figure.
This was about 4
what the hell? Really?
So I got on online dating, OkCupid, started talking to people on OkCupid, and for the first 18 months or so, I was mostly just chatting with people, had a few dates. They were fun, but didn't go anywhere. But in the course of it, I started realizing, hey, I kind of like meeting people. I kind of like the excitement of meeting someone new and getting to know them and find out about them. And unlike when I was a kid in my 20s, dating was suddenly fun. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm not in a rush to get partnered up again. I also put on my dating profile that I wanted to just keep things open because I had children and I planned to stay around until they were launched and off to college, which was going to be another 10 years or so. And I didn't want, there didn't seem to be anyone in my area, so I had to expand my dating radius out like 100 miles to find people.
Indiana.
Yeah, Central Indiana. Slim. It's a rough market here. Anyway.
So how long ago was this roughly? Sounds like
this would have been 2009, about 10 years ago. Yeah.
10 years ago.
Okay.
And so I put on my dating profile that, I just want to keep things open. I'm not really looking for a partner right now because I knew that I was going to be staying there. I didn't want people I might be dating, an hour or two away to think that if things went well, I might pick up and move there because I wasn't going to. I was going to stay in town where I could see my kids every day or two. And that eventually led me to a very nice relationship with someone who was also in the same situation, felt the same way, and that kind of opened the door to the whole non-monogamous thing. I was like, this really works for me. I like this. And so that's how I got where I am at.
And so that's when you met Eliza. After it was a number of years though, right?
Yeah, actually, it was quite a few years before I met Eliza. The first person I met who was happily non-monogamous and kind of in the same boat was someone else. I'm calling her Jane for this. And yeah, we were together for about 2.5 years, and she is actually the person who kind of introduced me to swinging. She hadn't done it herself, but we started listening to Swingercast and the old Swap Foo podcast, and thought it sounded pretty interesting, and eventually tried it out at a club a couple times and said, yeah, this is fun. So
Yeah.
And so in the course of the last 10 years, you haven't really had a monogamous dynamic.
not at all. No. Explicitly non-monogamous. Yes. I've always said, nope, I don't do that.
Okay. And it sounds like it's taken on slightly different forms over the years, and it's, I guess now you're even though you're partnered, you're solo. You both said you identified as solo poly in the email, and
So before we jump to your story, Eliza, I wanted to say, like, how do you two define your relationship at the moment?
I'm going to say that we are both love our relationship. We are together. It's super important to both of us. But it is not, and I think you would agree with me on this, it's not the most important thing in either one of our lives. And so I think that is what makes the difference between somebody who is, first of all, monogamous and polyamorous, and especially solo poly, like just the idea of like, I have to be partnered with somebody. Like that to me is, like, I can't stand that thought. And I actually, my heart kind of breaks for women my age, especially, who feel that way. Like, I have to have a partner. I have to have somebody. I have to get married again. I have to live with somebody again. You know, whether it's for financial reasons or romantic or emotional or mental reasons, whatever it is, to me, that is, I have to say I was married for 20 years, and like the last 5 years of my marriage, I kind of felt like, I don't really need this. You know, I don't need to be partners with somebody to raise my kids. Like, I'm the one raising them anyhow. Right. And so, I mean, I think that's where we are, is that we're both in love with one another, in love with our relationship, but it's not the most important thing in our lives. And that's not a bad thing. It's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah. You have a lot of independence and ability to do your own thing, but yet value your time together and make it a priority too.
Yeah. And we typically get together, every other weekend or so. And that is just about perfect, I think. It keeps it fresh. So when we see each other, it's like, hey,
tell me what happened to you in the last 2 weeks that you weren't able to text me, and so stuff like that. Also, it leaves time for the other people in our lives, which is really nice, whether that is my family, my friends, my work, or my other boyfriends or his other girlfriends. It leaves time. Now, I would say, and I hate the term, but that we are sort of, what do you call it, primary? Yeah. Primary partners. I hate that term. I hate it because it makes it sound like he's more important, but we've just been together for longer. Yeah.
It's descriptive, not prescriptive.
Oh. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. It describes the status quo, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that way.
Right.
Yeah. But it's comfortable making that, like, you've been together the longest. It's comfortable dynamic at the moment.
Right. And we have like our own routine. Every other week, somebody's going to somebody else's house. We're going to make some dinner. We're going to drink some wine. We're going to, do whatever.
Have fun.
Yeah. It's like being an old married couple, but only every other weekend. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, and maybe that's a good segue into hearing a little bit of your background, Eliza, on how you touched on it briefly, how you kind of got here, but do you mind taking us through it a little bit more?
So I grew up in Wisconsin, and as I told you earlier, I always dreamed of being a ballerina, and so I became one. And I did that for many, many years in Chicago, met my husband, my now ex-husband there. We got married. I stopped performing, but I didn't stop like teaching or choreographing. Had kids, you can't be in a dance studio when you have an infant and you have to, nurse that child. So kind of stopped doing that for a while. 20 years later, I found myself married to this man who was abusive. And I always thought to myself, well, I can handle anything. But the minute it started getting, now my kids at that point were teenagers and were beginning to stand up for themselves. And he was just an asshole to them. And so I said, you know what, we're out of here. So I filed for divorce. We left. They were teenagers. They were basically able to say, Dad, we really don't, we're going to hang out with you, but only on our own terms. And so that all worked out fine. So then I will tell you that very sadly, at the age of maybe 48, when I got divorced, I really thought I was never going to have sex again. I'm not kidding. I mean, I had no sex drive. I didn't even have a fantasy. I had nothing that turned me on.
Yeah.
I had a vibrator that was collecting dust for 5 years. I mean, it was just sad. And I didn't even think it was sad. I just thought, this is what happens when you get older. This is what happens.
Like, this is supposed to happen.
Right. Like, this is how all old people are. They're just sad, dried up little apricot vagina people. I mean, just like the sad. So then about a year after my divorce, I remember my son coming home one night and saying, Mom, you have got to find somebody to go hang out with. Go find a boyfriend. So I got online and I found this man who reawoken me. I mean, it was incredible. Like the greatest sex I'd ever had in my life. And I have had a lot of sex in my life. And he, at one point, so he was an artist. And at one point, I thought he was like freaky enough that I could say, hey, I want to try this thing where you and I still see each other, but we also like see and date other people and get romantically involved with them as well. And he was like, whoa, what are you talking about? And here, I thought I was like being this sort of pioneer. Like nobody's ever thought about this shit before. Nobody's ever thought about having more than one ring and having it be okay with everyone. I mean, I thought I was like being like this totally cuckoo hippie pioneer. And then, so he was like, no, I don't want to do that. We broke up briefly and then we got back together. And in the middle of sex one night, he was like, I need to ask you something. And I was like, oh my God, what? And he said, would you just please, can we just be monogamous and committed to one another for just 6 months and just see how it works? And I was like, okay. I'm not kidding you. It was like, it was so planned.
Yeah.
Asked that question in that moment. So we did that. And then crazy, I caught him cheating on me. And I was like, dude, this is what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted you and I to be able to have other people in our lives. So we broke up very sadly. He was an artist, and very sadly, about maybe 6-7 months later, he was hanging a show in Indianapolis and fell off the ladder and busted his head open, and they put him in a coma, and he never came back.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's horrible.
I mean, we did not end on great terms. So I really always thought, we'll be friends again because we had this great connection. He was a great guy, except for, that shit. But, so then I'm online and I meet this guy, and if you could see his OkCupid profile, it is literally like if you were to print it out, it would be like double-sided printout. Like 158 pages.
I believe it.
Yeah,
after the
we've gotten one of those
yes,
emails.
these guys saw the email. Exactly. So he's like, you always get asked that question, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? What are you looking for whenever you're on a dating site? And my thing was, well, I'll tell you what I'm not looking for. I don't want to get married again. I don't ever want to live with anyone ever again. So what I'm looking for is somebody who just like put up with me, like seeing whoever I want and being okay with it. And you can do that too. And so we're talking about this super soon after he gets a hold of me. And I'm like, I want this. I don't know if I can explain it. He's like, I think what you're talking about is solo polyamory. So I go and Google it. And I was like, oh, holy shit, you people have been doing this all along. And
I just didn't know it.
Nobody told me anything. So yeah, ever since then.
So I guess backing up. So how many years ago were you divorced?
I think it's about 6 years ago now.
Okay. And so then it's been the last 6 years, you've slowly been exploring this. And then how long have you two been together?
3 years, a little over 3.
3 and a few months. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just to give some context.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So you said slightly graphically, not that you had a lot of sex. I was curious, had either of you, and I know we're not focusing necessarily on the sex piece of it, but had either of you explored non-monogamy in your previous marriages at all, or was it strictly like,
or discussed it, or even had anything brought up about it? It was just assumed.
Like back when I was in high school, I remember saying to my friends, when I get married, I want my own bedroom. Like, won't it be super sexy to have your own space and be like, hey, you want to sleep over tonight? Husband? You know, and so I really wanted that. And I think that there was a part of me that just wanted that autonomy and not to always have to be freaking connected to somebody. I will also tell you that until I met my husband, I never was in my longest relationship. I wasn't involved with somebody for a year, but before that, 3 months. I also remember being told by guy friend of mine in high school, like, you are not meant to be tied down. And he didn't mean like BDSM. I was like, I think you're right about that. Like, I don't know. I like variety, and I don't understand why we can't have lovers the way we have friends. You know, right. I don't understand why it has to be just one. And if it's not, then, oh my gosh, you're just a terrible person. You know?
Yep. And I had not ever had any experience of that sort at all. When I was younger, I really wanted to find a partner. I was, very, very desirous of having someone in my life who would be a partner for me.
Well, and I also think culturally, when we were younger, that's what you did. You got married and you had kids.
Yeah. I took me a long time to do that, but I got there and I was really happy being married. I really enjoyed being a dad, being, part of this partnership or whatever. But we had really mismatched libidos, and that was a problem. And I wasn't happy with that part, but it was okay. I can deal. This is all good other than that, so I can deal with it. And I had lots of fantasies, but did not ever even think about cheating or anything like that. It was like, okay, I just suck it up, and this is what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But although I had no experience with non-monogamy, personally, I did have an exposure to the idea. And I think, like a lot of people of my generation who are now have gotten into polyamory and so forth, the sort of gateway was Robert Heinlein's science fiction. Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Time Enough for Love, Stranger in a Strange Land. There's a whole lot of these sort of free-floating, multi-connected, relationships in those books.
Right. So the concept was there.
Yeah. I always thought it was really interesting. I can remember having conversations with my dad as a teenager about, there's this book type, or The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and these people, they're having like these different sorts of marriages, like line marriages, where people just keep adding husbands and wives over time, and the whole thing just gets bigger and bigger, and generations and women with multiple husbands and stuff like that. That seems like makes a lot of sense. And he's like,
yeah,
it's hard enough.
Science fiction, son.
Science fiction. It's hard enough, just keeping 2 people in sync. I can't imagine doing it with more people.
Well, and what I think is so interesting is that when he talks about being married and they ended up having different libidos, I was talking about how I lost my sex drive. I mean, I think for a lot of couples, that unless you do something,
right,
like actively do something, you don't want to screw around with each other. It's boring after a while, right? And it's like same old. Like, I know this dick inside and out. I know what's going to happen in this bedroom. And so to do things like...
But there was a mismatch from the beginning, too. So, yeah.
There was.
But then that effect kicked in, and it got even more so.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm curious, you mentioned that your dad, or the quote you just kind of like comically pulled out was that it's hard enough getting two people on the same page.
Right.
Have you found, now that you're exploring solo poly, that's really not the issue? And maybe because you aren't looking for each of your partners to fulfill everything, but that you're able to get a piece of it from this person and a piece of it from this person. I guess, what is your experience with that at this point?
So I have 3 additional men in my life. Christian is the one that I talked to about sports and politics. I mean, he's a huge football fan. I'm a huge football fan. We like texting each other. I remember one time he was in China and he was like, "What are they doing?" And I was like, "Just stay on the phone and I'll talk you through the rest of the game." Lovely, beautiful. He's a huge soccer fan. And
went to Russia to go to all the World Cup games.
He's been to every World Cup for like that in his adult life. Then I have one who is, love the arts. So I have one who takes me to the opera and to the ballet. And when I have Michael Feinstein tickets, I'm like, "Hey, you want to go see?" Like, I will toss it out to the rest of them and be like, "Who the hell is that guy?" And he's like, "Oh my God, yes. Are you serious? How'd you score those tickets?" And then I have one who is super sort of like older and hippie and I don't know, just something else. I'll do like a whole different dynamic. And then I have this one who has, 158 page, like cooks the most amazing food. We have pie waiting for us after this. So I do feel like there is like, even just like logistically, these men serve different purposes for me. And I hate to put it that way, but it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yep.
Well, different interests too.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that really, just before you get into your point real quick, but sorry to cut you off.
Shut up for a minute. She's going to talk.
I realized that's what I was coming across. I wasn't going to do that. No, but it demonstrates how what you just said was, one person kind of fulfills different roles, but it demonstrates that one person cannot fulfill all of the roles for one other person. And that's what, in monogamy or in one relationship, you're expected to do that. And it's just, even people who decide to be monogamous, that's great. That's totally fine if you decide to do it, but realize that there's one person can't fulfill all of those needs.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why you need like family, friends, girlfriends or guy friends or whatever it is. You need those people around you as well. And, I feel like I get that from the men that I also sleep with, which is really nice. And I get it from, my family and friends, but it's just nice to have a man to see Michael Feinstein with.
Yeah.
So,
that isn't me.
Okay, sorry for interrupting you. Now you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't have quite the stable that she does.
we're working on it.
Yeah. I occasionally see someone. I uncharacteristically met a couple of women right in my town early this year, and had a couple of dates with one, and then that kind of fizzled out. And another one, we saw each other for a month or so, and she hadn't tried swinging before, but was kind of interested in it. So we went to a couple of clubs, and it was reasonably successful. She had a good time, but the problem was she's really introverted and not comfortable in crowds, and it's not the best sort of personality type to have for swinging. I don't want to.
At least in the club environment.
Yeah, at least, I was going to say. Right.
Anyway, luckily she found she was taking advantage of the open relationship and dating other guys too. Found a guy who really seemed to click with her more, and so I said, "Hey, great, go." She was going to focus on him. It's like, do that. That's good. And then just recently, I met someone on OkCupid, and we've been going out a little bit, and that seems to be going very nicely. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side of that question of, now that you don't feel like you have to get everything from a partner out of one partner, do you ever feel like, I don't know if it's jealousy, but like that you still have this need to be everything for one of your partners, or have you, like, because that's sort of the flip side to that is like, well, I expect everything out of my partner, and then I should be able to provide everything to my partner, or I don't want them to need something else. Do you still feel that, or have you both sort of been able to let that go, or maybe you never had that? I don't know.
No. So one thing, first of all, I think because you don't expect your partner to be everything to you, I think that really is something that takes the pressure off of you yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I am not going to Burning Man, and he's not upset about that. I want to find somebody else for you to go to the clubs with. Not upset about that, right? I mean, so this is one thing that I've always thought about jealousy in our dynamic, is that if Mark is out with somebody else and I'm home alone and I know that they're out and I get those feelings of like, ooh, I immediately think to myself, when I am out with Christian or Ben or Sam, and I know that he's not there with me, I know that he is supportive of it, and that he is cool with it, and that makes me love him even more. Right? So just him being supportive of me seeing those other men makes me love him even more. And so why would the opposite not be true? Like, why would he not love me more because I'm supportive of him seeing, Lisa or Carol or Linda or whoever it is? Like, I'm not the only evolved one. And to think that is arrogant. And so to give my partners the benefit of the doubt that they are as evolved as I am, as like woke, we're all sort of the same. Like we get it. I don't know that that's going to work in other dynamics. I don't know that that's going to work in a swinging dynamic. I don't know that that's going to work necessarily even in a polyamorous dynamic, but for solo polyamory, I think that is how it works. Like this is how I work, and I expect you, I know you're the same way.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because I think I don't want to say easy, but it's easier. Let's say, right, that Mark doesn't want to go see Feinstein. So for him, that's easy to be like, oh yeah, I take anybody to that as long as I don't have to go. Right. But if it's something that he wanted to do, or a piece of you that he feels that he should or he wants to fulfill, like that's where it kind of gets a little harder. And you kind of spoke to that, like, go to Burning Man. I don't want to, and you said this before we talked, so I'm not putting words in your mouth, that you don't want to go see naked hippies in the dust.
Exactly.
Not her words, not mine.
My words, I swear, my words.
So like for you, like that's an easy one, but like you said, it's the hard ones are when you're sitting at home, you don't have anything going on, and he's out having fun.
And maybe doing something that you would enjoy doing with him, right, or vice versa.
Have we ever had that situation?
I don't know that we have. I mean,
first of all, I'm going to tell you something, that I am I'm not an introvert in many ways, except that I need time to recharge and I need solitude. And so for me, there are lots of times when he'll be like, hey, you want me to come down? And be like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm going to just like watch Netflix and drink wine. And yeah, so I don't think that
not really. I mean, there have been times when you've gone out with folks and I'm like, fine, because I'm doing my thing, and I'm very much the same way. And that's as my understanding, that is kind of the definition of an introvert. It's not so much whether you like to be with people, it's what do you need to do to recharge?
Yeah.
When how do you get your energy? Do you get your energy by going out and being with people, or by going home and just relaxing and chilling? And I'm the same way. I'm very social. I like being with groups of people and friends and so forth. But when I've done that, I need to go home and just sit down, read a book, watch Netflix.
And I will also tell you that there is, in our dynamic, there is, Mark at least, always makes an effort to include my other men. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, one of the greatest days of my life, was that 2 years ago? Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
Valentine's Day either a year or 2 years ago. like the Saturday before. He had sent me a text like a month before saying, I've got a surprise for you the weekend before Valentine's Day, so be prepared. And I was like, what? And I'm actually talking to all of my other men about it, like, oh, he's got a surprise for me. He ends up, so I'm talking to Christian, like texting him, and he's like, well, what are you wearing? What do you think is going on? All right, text me pictures of the outfits you're bringing. And so he comes and he picks me up. We get in his car. We drive to Indianapolis. I'm like, I have no idea what is going on. We check in at the Alexander Hotel. I open the door and I walk in and I'm like, oh, there's a man in here. Because Christian had flown in to meet us. Total shock and surprise, like the best surprise I've ever had in my life. I haven't seen him in a long time. He actually lives in Maryland, or Washington, D.C., and Florida. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen him in months. And so he flew up to have Valentine's Day with Mark and I.
I went out and I picked him up at the airport, brought him to the hotel.
Oh my God. And he's texting me the whole time like, oh, what do you think the surprise is? I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding
And they're
me?
together the whole time.
They were together the whole damn time.
Well, I was in the car with her while she's texting with him. He's in the hotel waiting for us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, they're also, my porch is a little bit famous for all of my boyfriends meet each other on my porch. Like, they've all met. And, you know, once in a while that turns into a sex thing. Sometimes it doesn't, though. And most times it doesn't. But, like, it's an easy thing to do if everybody is just cool with it. You know what I mean? And nobody is worried about what they're not getting. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are. And
she has really good taste in men, apart from her ex-husband.
Yes.
And I absolutely love all of her other boyfriends. They're such cool people, and it's just a great time to hang out with, you know, her and them and chat, talk about things.
We do. I feel like it's like being with my best friends. You know, like the dearest friends you've ever had, whether they're from college or high school. These are the men that I hang out with now. Are like that for me. And I get to have sex with them.
No, I will say.
Okay,
that's awesome. Like that. It's just both of you are in a spot where it's like your surprises to each other can be each other's partners, and that doesn't. It's not a competition with her boyfriends to see who can get more time, and it's just let's all be happy. There's no reason to like beat each other down to make yourself look bigger.
Right.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And I will tell you, I think that part of it is because I'm solo polyamorous, there is no fucking prize. There is no bride. There is no housemate. There are no children. There's no tax returns. You know, there is no prize. There's nothing to win except for, you know, your own like good feelings and doing fun things and hanging out with, you know what I mean? So there is no competition because the prize has been taken out of it.
Yeah.
Not that I consider myself a prize, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I was going to say the prize is
like getting married, or I'm
status,
the one.
or,
Yes, yeah.
Right. Well, the prize would almost be spending time with you, and the people who are going to get to spend time with you are the ones who can be adults about it and not try to beat each other or beat your other boyfriends out of the picture to get more time with you. That's clearly not how to win more time.
And it has occurred to me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems to me as though it may be easier to take this approach and have this sort of point of view at the point of life that we're at now.
I totally agree.
Where we have had a marriage, we have kids, we're not looking for a partner to have kids with, you know, it's like that's all behind us. And now it's just like, okay, what do we want to do with our time now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally
That
agree.
was actually going to be my question, because if you were, 20, 30 years ago, do you think you would be in the same place? Like, do you wish you would have had this relationship dynamic back then? Or, I mean, obviously, I know, of course you love your kids and I'm glad that they're there, but like, would you be searching for someone like to settle down with, have kids with, and on that path?
20 or 30 years ago, yeah, I would have been looking for someone to have kids with, because I always knew I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be a father and have that experience. I also wish that I had known about this relationship dynamic back then, because I might have found a different way to go about having a family. Like, one of the women I met when I was on OkCupid, and we've never met in person, don't really talk anymore now, but for a while we were chatting all the time. She had a really interesting story in that she was getting older, later 30s or something, and she wanted to have kids, and there wasn't anybody sort of that she'd met who seemed like a good candidate to be a father, or that seemed to be going that direction. She had an old boyfriend who was quite a bit older than her, but she knew that he'd always wanted to have kids. And so she got in touch with him and said, "Hey, I want to have kids. Do you still want to have kids? If so, what if we co-parent? We have some kids and we co-parent them. We're just not a thing together." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." So I think if I remember the story correctly, they actually wrote up a contract about who, specifying the support for the kids and how this was all going to be handled. They bought a place together. This was on some island out in the Seattle area or something.
Of course,
yes. So I think it was Seattle, but anyway. And so they had this old house. They all lived. They lived there. They had 2 kids, 2 boys, I think. And as the boys got older, they started building a little compound. Each of the boys had their own little separate hut or building away from the main house. And then there was another one. So the main house was kind of like the communal space, and she and the guy would have their own bedrooms there most of the time. And the boys had their own little rooms. And then they had this other outbuilding that they called the fuck shack. So when they had guests come over, one of them, they would just go down there, and that was where they'd stay with their guests.
See, super interesting
and it works. I mean, they did a great job.
And you know what? I'd love to meet those boys now, and just know, say, were you, did you even have any idea this was going on? Did you have any idea how unusual the setup was? And if, or were you but it was.
I don't know. They were homeschooled for at least a good part of it, so they may not have had the perspective of the rest of the society.
The football team calling your mom a big slut. That was not happening.
Well, maybe that's a segue into. Do any of your kids or families know about your relationship dynamics since you've gotten divorced?
If they do, how do they feel about it? What is their response?
So first of all, both my kids know. I raised my kids to be very, very, very sex positive. I mean, I don't think they keep anything from me. They could. And even then, I'm like, that's cool. You got to have your own secrets too. So my kids both know. I remember the first time I was ever away with Mark and Christian in Chicago. My daughter texted me and I was like, "Hey, I'm with Mark and Christian in Chicago." And she's like, "Oh, you go, Mom." And I was like, "It's not as kinky as it sounds, dear." But so my kids know. My kids are super cool about it. We've talked so much about, I have told my kids over and over again, you do not have to get married. You don't have to. If you want the big party, I will throw you a big fucking $10,000 party. If you want to have kids, I will help you raise your kids. Whatever it takes. I don't want you to get married because you feel like you have to get married in order to fulfill adulting, Yeah. And so my kids are totally cool about it. My mom, I've told her, my mom is a widow and just came back from a 2-day holiday in Paris with her 84-year-old boyfriend that she met on Match. So she's cool. She's totally cool about it. She really is. All of my family members have met Mark and they adore him. A few of my family members have met Christian. Both my kids have met Ben and Steve as well. So my kids have met all of them. My sister, though, which is so weird to me because she's younger than me, has turned into this big prude. How can you do that? How can you not get, don't tell me you don't get jealous. I'm like, well, everybody tends towards, when I go through the whole thing about it makes me happy, it makes him happy, blah, 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 blah. How many times do I have to say this? Oh, you just haven't found the right person yet. God. I'm 54 years old.
You found four. You found four of them.
I know. I'm like, yeah, I've done, rich and handsome. I think I'm just going to do like what I want now. And yeah. So my family is absolutely cool with it, except for my sister. But then my mom and my kids give her a hard time.
But they all know about it, other than just, sounds like she's got a case of the jellies. She's a little jealous of what you got going on.
I think a little bit. She's in those years where she's raising now a grade school child, and she and her husband are working their asses off, just trying to get by. And I'm sure that it does, I'm half the year my kids aren't even here. I live alone. I don't have to make anybody waffles for breakfast. You know what I mean? So I think
other than the three guys that stayed over.
Right.
Except, and then I'd be making breakfast. So.
I was going to say, that's his job.
So don't even look at me.
Yeah,
that's a pretty sweet setup.
This is a bit of a sticking point with us. She never eats breakfast.
No, and this is a nice thing too. Like all of my other boyfriends, they like breakfast. Nice they go out for breakfast together, and I stay in bed. They go out for breakfast together, and I stay in bed. It's perfect.
So my kids,
I don't know why everybody doesn't do this.
I know. I'm telling you.
My kids, I haven't been quite as sort of sex positive and open and talking about that with them as Eliza has. But as they've gotten older, I've just been a little more open about things. It was always like, my friend's coming over and so forth. And now I'm leaving books out, that are about polyamory and stuff. And they know that I'm seeing different people and so forth. I've never mentioned swinging to them, so I don't know about that. But my dad I've talked to about non-monogamy. I can't remember whether I've actually talked about it specifically with my sisters. I don't think they would, have some serious problem with it, but I don't know that we've really gotten into it in the past. It hasn't come up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fascinating, right? Because we talk to quite a few people who are younger, and then you talk to people, in their mid 50s, late 50s, and it's like, what are people worried about with you? It's not like you aren't you're obviously mature enough at this point. I mean, I don't know what people would be concerned about. I don't know.
Right. So even if we're making really stupid decisions at this point, we are affecting nobody but ourselves anymore. Right. I mean, like, it's not like my kids are never even around anymore. When they are, they're down in the basement making their own bad decisions. And, so I'm with you. Like, that's how I feel about my sister. Like, why do you even care? Like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not hurting anybody is my big thing. As long as I don't hurt anybody, I can do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. So I'm curious on a subject that we do bring up most episodes, but so one thing we have heard, and this is in no way to insinuate that either of you belong in a retirement home, but I promise I'll get there.
Whoa!
I'm getting there. But I have heard that
I can't wait to hear this question.
All right, I'm going to do a jack palance and drop and do 50 push-ups right now. Just so.
That's right. No, you're both. I mean,
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So the topic of STDs and STIs in the communities where people aren't worried about getting pregnant and aren't worried about all these other things are much higher because they don't think they need condoms or to get
condoms all the way.
Yeah, my sister actually does work with the elderly community, and that was one of her things. Is like, everybody's getting herpes now because everybody men can pop a pill and get hard and go screw around, and that has changed like everything. And so I totally get that. And this is a discussion I've had with my mother. Like, Mom, she's like, but we're monogamous. I'm like, yes, but you weren't. This is not the only man you've ever slept with in your life, Mom. You guys have got to get tested and be careful. And I'm sure she did not get tested, and I'm sure he does not wear a condom, but I've tried.
Right. Well, and I think that was exactly my question. Like, because you've now both been in the dating world in your 50s, and I guess how is it? Like, what is
what is that discussion? Maybe
right.
Does it exist? If it does, we obviously assume it does, but How are people handling it?
For myself,
he just comes with condoms. He will not.
I always, if I'm going on a date, I bring condoms, and I just assume that we're going to use them, and I don't do any penetrative sex without condoms. In fact, after 3 years together, we just recently decided, okay, we're good between us two.
Yeah.
But everybody else, if it's penetrative sex, it's condoms, not oral sex.
Yeah.
But
No, there's always a level of risk you're taking, right? Everyone's taking.
Oh, for sure.
I get tested typically once a year because that's when insurance will pay for it, and with my physical and so forth. And I figured tests are something that you should do periodically just to find out if there's something that you aren't aware of. But as I've heard people say on your podcast before and other podcasts and Dan Savage and all that, it's really only good the day you get it, and not even necessarily totally accurate then, because maybe something is incubating that hasn't quite shown up on the test.
Sure.
Yep.
But again, that's still not a reason to be like, well, I'm never getting tested then, because it's not, and that's not obviously what you said. I'm just.
Right. But
go ahead. Sorry.
We're not, I think, either of us in the group of people who say, I'm not going to have sex unless you show me your test results,
Right.
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't matter.
Because here's the other thing too. Really, are you going to have sex with somebody you can't trust? Right. If it's somebody that you don't like, you feel like, he's kind of giving me the squeebies. Do you even want to fuck that person? I don't. Like, I don't want to. If it's somebody who I think is like trying to be deceitful. Yeah. Not only do I not want to have sex with you, I don't even want to make out with you. Like, I don't even want to like hang out with you. So that's going to be, and I might be a little bit naive and be maybe trusting, but I do feel like the men that I see, I've got a good, like, my instincts are good about whether they are.
Well, and I think it sounds like, right, you're not in a situation of desperation, right? Where you're like, well, I haven't gotten any in 4 years. I'm really pent up, and like, I'll just,
I was like that. I totally was like that, and just happened to meet a person. But even then, we used condoms.
Right. But I mean, I think has your ability, not your ability to filter people, but like are you more selective now than you were when you first started, because you've kind of realized that if this one doesn't work out, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be another one.
No, I would say actually, if anything, I'm probably more selective now.
Right.
I'm more selective now. Just first of all, because yes, I have an assortment. I have a little collection. It's like a troll doll collection. But I have men in my life who are. I mean, don't remember the last time I was on Tinder or OkCupid or Plenty of Fish or anything, because I'm just so content.
Yeah.
And at peace with where I am right now. And once in a while I'll hop back on and go out on a date with somebody, and I feel disingenuous doing that. Like, am I really going to make room for one more man in my life? And am I, do I really want to do that? I am telling you that I am the luckiest woman on the face of the earth, because I met this guy, and then like 3 weeks later I met Christian. And then maybe about 3 weeks after that, I met Steve. And then at the artist's funeral, I met, what am I calling him? Ben.
Yes.
So I met all these men in quick succession who were of like mind. I mean, who said, no, this is how I do things too. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how? Like, what is the universe converging on my forehead right now? So I just feel like, I have gone out on a few dates with a few other people, and once in a while, like, I have some out of town boys that pop in, and they're like,
just got in touch again with, like, what's his name?
Yeah.
Do you want to come? So those people
but the bar's a lot higher now, right? Because you found that you can do it well. You don't need to settle for every time you go out on a Tinder date that you have to get some.
Yeah.
And I would say my bar is higher too, although I am on all the different dating apps regularly. I mean, every day I'm checking them, because I don't have as I said, the stable that she does. I've got a couple of people I've seen. Right now, I've got one other person that I'm dating, and
Sure.
This is why we're looking for girls.
That's right. Advertisement right here.
That's what we're
Central
trying to promote.
Indiana.
I don't have a SoundCloud, but
So I have more availability than she does for additional connections, and I would like to fill that. Plus, I'm also aware of the fact that unless you are constantly going out and expanding your social network, whether it's romantic or just friends, it will inevitably contract because people drift away, people move away, people have a problem with you and cut off communications or something. Or they die as you get into, older parts of life. I'm not there yet.
I know. I can't believe Emma said you guys were going to the old folks home.
So I think it's really important to be putting a little bit of effort all the time into trying new things, looking for new ways to connect to people, reaching out and saying hello to people. And because if you don't do that, inevitably your social circle is going to contract. And that's not a good thing. It's good to have a broad network.
Yeah.
And have you found other ways besides the online dating world to, like, some other ways you would recommend people that are coming out of marriages after 20 years or think that, well, and because we do get these emails quite a bit where people are
how
like,
do we
oh,
meet people?
yeah, I was married forever, and I'd love to get into swinging, or I'd love to get into poly, but it's too late for me now. I'm past that. And
first thing, it's not too late, definitely. Secondly, apart from the apps, I don't know. Like in where I live, the little modest-sized city in Indiana, there is a polyamory meetup group, and if someone said, how do I start meeting people like this? I would say go to that. You might not meet somebody that you connect with romantically, but maybe they've got friends. Maybe you get to know them, you get to know their friends, and maybe one of their friends is someone that you might get along with.
One thing about that, though, is that it's definitely younger people.
Yeah.
We're going to be the oldest folks there. Yeah. I mean, you almost have to, I think, as a person of a certain age who wants to, start exploring this type of life, you're going to have to get used to that, like being the oldest person in the room. You're just going to have to get used to it. I mean, that is, I notice at the swing clubs, we are definitely not the oldest ones there at all. But when it comes to things like, the polyamory talk rooms on Facebook, we've got a solo polyamory group on Facebook. We're old in there. Yeah, and it's very young, sort of. Like, I always make fun of, like, they all have, like, long hair and pet lizards and, like, really, like, sword collections and, like, really, like, you guys, being polyamorous is weird enough. You don't have to, like, take it to the next level. But seriously, like, I do feel like we are always kind of the old people in the room.
At one end of the bell curve.
Until somebody else your age shows up in there and is looking for someone to commiserate with that is also, I mean, so you aren't going to meet the people unless you're out there looking.
Yeah, this is the bottom line, is show up and be places.
You got to show up. And that's why I check, like, okay, I'm on Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, OkCupid, Coffee Meets Bagel, and I check all of them every day. Just because I got to show up.
Two of those I've never even heard of.
That's because they're old people apps.
Probably.
Hey, if they're apps, they can't be that old.
What was it? Coffee Meets Bagel?
Coffee Meets Bagel,
that's a really old one.
I hate that thing, but, I have met a couple people through it, so it's like, all right, I'll do this.
I will tell you, too, that one of the men that I see is married. They're in an open relationship, and she is lovely, amazing. We'll text every now and then. Once in a while, she'll send me a text like, hey, I'm going out of town, just letting you know. And but they're in their 40s, so they're younger than us. And I know that they do a lot of the apps. They go to clubs. They both have separate OkCupid accounts, and they also have they're how can you do that? Like hook them to one another?
Yeah, you can link.
They link
to one other
another.
Account. Yeah.
So, and they, 40s, and definitely not like with a pet. I mean, they actually do have a lizard now that I think about it. But they're not like they're the most like middle American. If you were to see them, you'd be like, well, these guys? Really? I mean, they're just so vanilla looking that you would not even for 1 second believe that they are, doing the things that they are doing and enjoying it and really, loving it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe also brings up another question, I guess. Is age even an issue for either of you? Like if you match with somebody who's 10, 15, 20 years younger, does that matter? Or
older, I guess.
Or older, yeah.
I rarely see people older who I would go, oh yeah, I want to match with them. Sometimes it happens. But younger, because I'm not looking for a life partner anymore, I'm not looking for, to couple up with someone.
Or to have more kids.
Or to have more kids, yeah,
God
definitely
forbid.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, you still can.
I was going to say that's
so good, but I don't want to. Can't afford it. Because that's been taken out of the equation. I'm happy to consider going out and having a relationship with someone who's significantly younger than me. I got to admit that I tend to prefer people who are closer to my age, just because we have more of the same outlook, more common experiences.
The same bands.
Yeah, right. Just kind of cultural milieu kind of reasons.
Yeah.
But
it's easier to, you have a lot more to talk about with people that are...
Well, and Mark, though, you have to remember, is like a burner guy. So all of his burner friends are in their 20s.
20s or 30s.
Early 30s.
Early 30s.
If they're the old ones.
Yeah, the
decrepit ones are 32. So he is kind of the papa of their camp. But, I mean, they're lovely, beautiful people. And I'm sure if you ever got the chance to have a romantic relationship with one of those people who really kind of got you on that level, you would say, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
For me, I'm 54. Ben is 67. And I always had a thing for older men. Always. When I was 25, I dated 50-year-olds. It was like super hot for older guys. And now, I feel like my age, finally, I'm dating the men that I've always preferred my entire life. So even Ben is a little old for me, but so he's 67. Steve is, I think, 43 now. So that's
the spread.
Yeah. No,
20, I didn't even think about that till right now. Wow. I've got a couple of the generations in bed with me. I don't know. I know, there's one man that I am in touch with. I think he's in his late 30s. We have a great time when we're together. It's sporadic. That was just a silly little thing. But, I don't know, you get on OkCupid, and I don't know if you are on any dating sites, Emma?
Not really at the moment, no.
Because you get, the craziest shit as a woman. You get,
yes, in the past.
I was getting things at the age of 52 from 19-year-old boys, and this was before you could keep somebody from actually messaging you. So you could say, what I would see, but that didn't keep them from seeing you. So they could message you and be like, will you take my virginity? What? Are you kidding me? No, I won't. Please don't even contact me again. But there are, this is...
Yeah. I would be a little curious.
I think it's such a different world online for women than it is for men.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
much so.
You just
And
get
when
approached
we
by
have been on OkCupid in the past,
everybody if you are a girl.
Yeah.
And you don't get approached by anybody if you're a man. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Especially not if you're a 59-year-old guy, balding, and all that. So,
yeah. That's...
Oh, shit. I just ruined my advertisement here.
Yeah, so I don't know that I would go much younger than
19?
Then 19.
like 40 seems reasonable.
Yeah. Cool. How about any funny instances or like a blooper that has happened to either one of you that you'd want to share?
You have permission.
Sexually related or not?
It doesn't have to be sexually related, since we know your kids are planning to listen.
This is so, at one point, I remember I live in a really old house, sitting in my kitchen. It was winter. I was like making soup or something, texting with this one. He's like, oh my God, I've totally been communicating with this really beautiful woman on like FetLife or something. Wasn't that what it was?
No, it was Kick, and we met on.
It wasn't Kick. No, that's not
Swing,
why you have
swing
those
Lifestyle.
pictures.
Swing
That's
Lifestyle.
what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I
was like,
mention those. I'm on
oh,
those
and he
too.
was like, oh, I'm just so excited. I think we're going to set something up, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, send me a picture of her. What does she look like? I get a picture of her labia. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And he was like, I know, right? And I was like, so I said, Mark, we have to talk, because first of all, if somebody is asking you for pictures of me, please tell me you are not sending them pictures of my vagina. And secondly, like, I was seriously like thinking that it was going to be a picture of like her with her cat, you know, like, look how cute I am with me and my kitten.
It was her with her pussy.
Oh. So yeah, that was a big blooper as far as, and at that point I was talking to Christian on the phone. I was like, holy shit, he's sending me pictures of other women's vaginas when I'm asking for a picture. And he's like, I think maybe he thinks of you as more of a friend now. Like, he's like, he needs maybe some guy friends now. But I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that was something. So that.
It was a teachable moment.
It was totally teachable. And it was handled with grace and humor. But, yeah, that's when seriously, as a woman, you start thinking to yourself, what pictures am I sending to people? And am I sending them to people that I trust enough not to do this bullshit? I mean, like, I did not see your face. That's for sure. There was no face.
To be fair, there was no face in it.
And
this was a picture she had on the website.
Yeah, she was sharing it with others on the website. But oh my gosh, I was just like, holy crap. Yeah.
So
that's hilarious.
I learned at that point, and we had a good communication going from about that.
Yeah.
Mine, I don't know. Mine maybe was just my whole first swing club experience with the woman Jane that I was seeing for a few years, shortly, way back in the start of my polyamorous career. This was 2012, I guess. I had a friend who worked. He was an advisor in some office at the White House during Obama's first administration, and he'd always told me that. Right, a moment of silence.
I know.
God. And he'd always told me that one of the perks of his job was he could get friends a tour of the West Wing, and you could see the Oval Office and all that stuff. And I was like, cool. So after Obama got reelected, he's like, all right, I've been in Washington for a couple decades now or something. I've got to get out of here. This is just too much. So he was gonna quit. I was like, oh shit, this is my chance. I got to do this. So Jane and I decided we'd do a road trip out to DC, and we'd get the tour of the Oval Office from my friend. So we drove out there and stayed with him, and while we were getting ready for this, she suddenly hit me with this thing, said, hey, we've been listening to these swinger podcasts, and there's a club in D.C. Would you want to visit it? And I was like, I've never done that before, but sure, let's do that. So the evening of the day that we were seeing the Oval Office, then the evening we were going to go out to this swing club. The only problem was that it was a club that was sometimes BDSM, sometimes swing, and they alternated. And unfortunately, the only night we could go was that night, and that was a night when it was a BDSM club instead of a swing club. And we're like, oh, what the hell? Let's go see what it's all about.
Fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
So we did that, and both of us were on a real budget at the time, so we're trying to do this on the cheap. And we were staying way over the river and, quite a ways away. And we didn't even consider doing a taxi. We're like, checking metro and bus schedules. We're like, well, there's a bus that stops.
In like your BDSM clothes?
No. We're dressing up in what our idea of a club clothes were. I think I had a suit on and she was in a dress or something, So we found there was a bus stop a couple blocks away that would, take a bus all the way right to the door practically, like a block away. So like, great, we'll do that. So we jump on the bus, drive out there. And when the driver drops us off, they're like, okay, I just want you to know if you're going back on the same bus, you can't get picked up here. You've got to go several blocks back. And she told us where, I was like, oh, okay. So we go to the club. And we look around, and there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on, but it's not really our thing. And so after about an hour, we're like, all right, that's probably enough. And we head out, and we're in our club clothes. We're walking to the bus station, bus stop, and I'm looking around, and I'm going, this is a really sketchy neighborhood. I'm feeling very uncomfortable in my nice clothes.
And it wasn't even that late at this point, right? Because you hadn't been there that long.
It was midnight-ish or something.
Okay, yeah. I guess it's still...
Yeah. And so we get to the bus stop, and it's in front of this church or something, and there's a guy sleeping in a sleeping bag up on top of the steps of the church, and there's nobody else in view, and there's barely any street lights, and I'm like holding my light up, trying to look at my phone up, with the light on, looking at the bus schedule. I'm like, oh shit, it's going to be an hour or more before there's a bus coming here. And we're looking around going, this doesn't feel right. So
I don't think we should hang out here for an hour.
I don't think we should hang out here for an hour. So I'm looking at Google Maps and everything. I realize, oh, shucks. Shucks.
Yeah.
Right, like a block the other direction from the club was a metro station. And the metro stopped a ways away from my friend's house. We'd have to walk a ways, but that's all right.
Is this your blooper?
This is my blooper. Yeah, because the whole
really long-winded blooper.
I'm sorry. It's a long-winded.
Hey, you knew this
You've
about
seen
him
my
before you got
profile.
involved.
You've seen my email.
All of this to say we could have taken the train instead of the fucking bus.
So then we had to walk. We found the biggest thoroughfare we could find that led back in that direction. We walked along that and caught the metro back, and then had to walk back from the metro station.
Hopefully she wasn't
we got back
heels.
without getting mugged. There you go.
That's the blooper. You're supposed to get mugged in a blooper.
Well, wait. First off, did you see the Oval Office?
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's much smaller than it looks on TV.
Yeah. And hopefully it was Jane wearing heels, because that would have been a long walk.
I don't recall. I think she might have been.
Hey, that's her problem.
I know. I can empathize with long walks.
They wouldn't have been tall like spiky heels, but maybe a bit of a heel.
No, yeah.
So it's a good story. It's a little long. Yes.
Well, the DC listeners will be able to relate.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally.
And as former DC livers, we understand.
Yes.
Yep. And
we're familiar with the metro.
Right. So you can cut that all out. My first time in a swing club, we had to walk through a really sketchy neighborhood and almost got mugged, and then we went to the metro station. So there you go. That's the...
Yeah. Almost get mugged? It was a guy sleeping on the church stairs.
His sleeping bag was very threatening.
Well,
is there anything else that we may have missed?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, is there anything that you want to make sure that, like, for anybody else who's thinking about doing this at your stage in life or at any stage in life, like, any tips or tricks or words of wisdom that you'd like to impart?
I would say that the one thing that I would like to say is that I think that that we can have romantic partners the way that we have friends. And that we can have, like, nobody says to you can only have one friend. And that's it for the rest of your life. Pick one. And that's it. You can do that. And especially at our age, when things like child rearing, home buying, purchasing, all of that is no longer really an issue, that this is the time then to start thinking about who is it that what do you want to do? Do you want more than one romantic lover in your life? And if so, you can find those people. You can find them. Mm-hmm. You really can. They exist. I mean, they're few and far between, but the ones who are out there are awesome. And your life can be really, simple in its complexity. I mean, it's just, it's a simple choice to make. And it's so rewarding. And especially if you are somebody especially as a woman who is just after being married and having to answer to somebody for God knows how many fucking years, to be able to just say, I'm not answering to anybody but myself anymore. And you men who want to be invited along, come along with me. Let's all have a great time together. It's going to be like camp. And so, yeah, it's totally doable. It's not too late. You just need to find the right people. And it's, if I can do it in the middle of freaking Indiana, anybody can do it. Anybody.
Yeah. And I would echo all those sentiments and just say that it's been really fantastic for me to discover non-monogamy and lose the focus on this has to, when I was younger, it was like, you would meet someone and it was like, oh, this is the person, this has got to work, and if it didn't work out, it would be devastating and so forth. And just to discover that, no, if you have different goals and it doesn't work out, that's fine. Let go and just, wish them well, and then look for someone who does work for you, mm-hmm. who will have similar goals to yours. And if, as you go, you might drift apart. And at that point, realize it and just say, okay, that's all right. Mm-hmm. It's been great. I've really enjoyed all this. And now you can look for something else and I can look for something else. And that's just immensely freeing. It just gets rid of so much, stress and so forth in your life.
The pressure of having to be coupled.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Right.
The other thing that I would say is that, and I think that this is super important, especially for somebody of my age, that I've made really good friends, like really amazing, good, non-romantic friends through the dating apps.
Yeah. That
as long as you are, honest, like I remember my first date going out with this guy, he just was like, hey, basically got on Tinder and was like, hey, what are you doing tonight? I remember you're like really close to me. I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. And he was like, okay, let's go meet for dinner. And we did. And I told him, I'm not monogamous. And he was like, well, kind of not my thing. And I was like, that's fine. So let's just be friends. Do you know, I was invited to his wedding. The only non-family member, he was my guest, invited to his wedding last year. And I mean, whenever his wife is out of town, she's like, yeah, go hang out with Eliza, because she trusts me because I've always been super honest. And, has told her when I first met her, we met going on a date and decided that we were not romantically compatible. But now we're like, and seriously, we talk once a week. I expect my phone call from him every Tuesday night. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and we're dear friends, and I've made several really good friends. And so dating apps aren't just for getting laid. Mm-hmm. After the age of 50, you can make really, really good friends too. And don't discount that.
Yeah. And those, I've had the same sort of friendships develop with people I've never even met in person, mm-hmm. that I met through the dating apps. And I got involved in Burning Man because of women who I met on OkCupid who told me about Burning Man. I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Only one of them have I ever met, and that was like once with a guy she was seeing out in San Francisco.
Right.
So yeah, it can open up your world so much. It's amazing. Sorry. Resources. You asked about that.
Yeah.
There was a great little book called "Playing Fair: A Guide to Non-Monogamy for Men into Women" by a guy named Pepper Mint, who's I think a big name out in polyamory out in the Bay Area.
So I've read it. It's really good. I hate his name.
But yeah, it's fantastic. And I think it would be fantastic for anybody, man or woman, monogamous or non-monogamous, it doesn't matter. It just is really good advice about how to have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for throwing that in there.
Yeah.
We will put links to that in the show notes.
And thanks for everything that you both shared tonight, because I think a lot of the insight into, like, right at the end there, just like, if your goal, you're getting on a dating site and your goal is to meet the one, if that's what you're doing, like, but don't walk through life with blinders on, because you don't know who you might be missing by doing that. And you guys have exemplified that as well in your ability and willingness to meet each other's, your metamors. And like, you wouldn't necessarily think that you would find a close friend in your partners, but you've done it. And I think that's a great lesson to take away as well. So Thank you for doing that and for sharing everything with us.
And for reaching out in the first place, too.
No, you're very welcome. I'm so glad that you decided we were worth interviewing. It's been a total gas.
Most listeners, if you reach out to us and have a compelling story.
It doesn't have to be a 47 double-sided page.
He said 158 pages.
That literally starts with, "It was a dark and stormy night," right?
Yes. And it ends on the Metro.
The worst novel ever written.
Well,
I think it's a good trait, because I don't know, it's better to share too much than not enough. It's even over communication is better than no communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, maybe with that, we will let you both get into your Sunday evening, and we will keep in touch. And thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
It's been wonderful.
Yes. Lovely.
And we're back.
But just for a second.
I was going to say, just for a second. You interrupted me.
I know. But only for a second I interrupted you.
Okay, so we recorded the previous interview, and then a week later, Mark and Eliza reached out to us and wanted to add a more discussion around being diagnosed with an STI. So
specifically this conversation is mostly about HPV. And so HPV is a very tricky one. And there's a lot of different types, and there's a lot of different information out there. So we did our best to present what we know to be the best information or the facts on it. We don't ever claim to be doctors. We don't know everything about it. And Mark and Eliza both did quite a bit of research on it. And so they're speaking from sort of the perspective of recently having been diagnosed and doing the tons and tons of research you do when you learn about something that you have. And so we've included a lot of resources in the show notes for you. And we also just wanted to say, like, please do your own research, talk to your doctor. And we are working on getting some actual medical professionals on the show in the future to help answer some of these questions and get some clarity that we don't have today. So sort of take this conversation and use it as a sort of an example of a firsthand experience of how to navigate these things. And if we misspoke on a number or a fact, please just keep in mind that we aren't medical professionals.
Yeah, we just try our best, and I think this conversation is super valuable because you get to see firsthand or hear firsthand how they handle the situation. So I really hope a lot of people get a lot out of this.
So enjoy, and we will see you in a few minutes for the outro.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Part 2.
Part 1.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Mark and Eliza. So real quick, why we're doing this, right, is we had recorded the first part of this interview that everybody just listened to probably like a month and a half ago, and since that time the episode 78 with Michelle in Orlando aired, and after that you kind of reached out and said, well, hey, they shared some information about some STI testing and testing results that they got in their experience, and also after our discussion you had an experience that you thought would be beneficial, and so you reached back out. So we're super grateful that you did that, and we really appreciate it, and we're happy to have you both back on again. Still.
This is hilarious to me, though, because when he forwarded the email that he sent to you, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, they don't care.
We care about everybody.
Of course we care.
They're not your medical providers. Like, oh my God. So then he said he checked with you to see if it was as weird as I felt like it was. And he was like, no, they were totally cool about it. I was like, all right.
Well, I don't know what that says about us, but
I think it speaks very highly of you, because I would have been like, well, do you really think I care? What's on
well, so maybe we should clue everybody in, I guess, on your end. Mark, do you mind sharing what happened since last time we talked?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, about a week after we had our interview, I went into the doctor because several months earlier, I had gone in to see a nurse practitioner at a clinic that my employer has, because I had some little things that looked like razor bumps down at the base of my penis. And I was a little concerned. I thought they might be genital warts or molluscum, and I wanted to check it out. She looked at them and said, nah, just razor bumps. Don't worry about it. And then after our interview, I suddenly was looking at that one day and went, wait a minute, those are still there. And that doesn't seem right. So I went back in, got an appointment with my actual doctor, and he took one look at it and said, oh, yeah, that's genital warts. So I immediately was ticked off at the nurse practitioner had misdiagnosed it.
Because you said there were a few months in between there, right?
Yeah, there's a few months in between there. And, we're having sex and other people.
Right.
So that's when I reached out to you and said, hey, shall we talk about this a little bit? And since then, Eliza and I did some research to make sure that we're going to be giving some good information and not just passing along more sort of urban myths and bad stuff. So
yeah, well, I'm curious then. Like, so two things, and maybe a question directed at each of you. So first of all, you got this news, and then you had to share it with Eliza and potentially other partners.
Yep.
And then second, on Eliza's side, like, how did you receive that? And like,
I'm gonna interrupt you for just a second. I don't do this very often.
Yeah, but it's inappropriate when you do.
But you said genital warts, and I just want to be clear that there are different viruses that can cause different types of warts. So I wanted to see if you could expand on that diagnosis first, and then answer Finn's question.
Fair point. Let's get the facts out of the way.
Okay. So here's the facts. As I have learned from doing some research here, well, first off, I kind of knew this, but they're really, really common. Something like 80% roughly of people who are sexually active in their life are going to get infected with some form of HPV, human papilloma virus, at some point in their life.
Right. And not all of them, though, will give you warts.
Yeah.
Some of them nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay. You're infected, but you don't know it. Nothing. There's no visible sign.
Right. And there's no test for any of those.
And there's a whole lot of different variety, strains that cause genital warts, and strains that cause warts on fingers and feet and, other parts of your body don't cause genital warts. So you can't get it from like having a wart on your finger and jerking somebody off.
Or like having a foot fetish.
Yes. Right. So I've got visible warts, and there are two strains which cause something like 80 or 90% of the visible genital warts. So it's probably one of those two strains. Don't know, but there's a bunch of other strains that can cause visible warts. but they account for just a small proportion of the cases that are found.
Right. Okay.
And the people think about HPV and STIs in, as potentially causing cancer, HPV causing cancer of the ovaries or oropharyngeal, in your throat. There are two main strains that can cause cancer, and those do not generally cause visible warts. I think they have been found in some warts, but they're not really thought to cause the visible warts. So if you have visible warts, as I do, it's probably not one of the cancer-causing varieties.
Right, which is super important and which I did not know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
So to your question, I was on like a superstar rock star weekend with a friend of mine, and I get a call from Mark, which I'm not used to at all. So I was like, oh, what is going on? He was like, can we please talk? And normally he would never, ever.
We just text all the time. We never talk.
And especially in a situation like that, when he knew like I was going to go see Earth, Wind and Fire in a private box and then go out yachting the next day. And, so he knew I was not going to be like, hey, what's up? So I was like, okay, thinking that like maybe he'd had a death in the family or something. And so he called me and said, I just want you to know that I have genital warts. And I was like, is that all? Because you freaked me out. Now, here's the thing that I do know. My ex-husband had throat cancer that was HPV positive. I also have an ex-lover who got the same thing. So at this point, I'm feeling like Typhoid Mary, right? I mean, I'm like everybody. But I was told by the doctor, by my ex-husband's oncologist. I mean, because I was like, well, I've been tested for HPV when I have my pap smears, and I'm not positive for it. So what the hell is going on here? How did you? And that doctor actually pulled me aside after our first meeting with him and said, look, I know you're probably thinking that something terrible is going on in your husband's, he's probably messing around with it, but you can have that. In most cases of cancer, it lies dormant and just sticks to one piece of DNA and changes it over the course of like 20 to 25 years. So it probably was something that happened many, many years ago. And I was like, okay, so I don't have to kill him. That's good. So I knew that. I did know that I knew that it was not probably something that I had given him. I could have. Who knows? But my big fear was we need to make sure, you get screened for the cancer now. So, and that's when we learned that the wart causing variety is not the same as the cancer causing variety, which is the only thing that I would worry about.
Yeah.
I was also told by that doctor nearly everybody who's sexually active has HPV in some way, shape, or form. Most people just shed it. Most people, and there's no sign of it afterwards. You can't, even if you're tested for it, there's no sign that you did have it at one point. So it's just so many moving parts. And that's what worried me, was that it would be cancer causing. And it was a relief to know that that was not the case. Yeah.
Now, the bummer part of it was that warts can be hard to get rid of, with treatment. And I mean, I've had warts on, fingers and feet before, and even with freezing treatments, they just came right back. And I had them for years. And then your body, typically most people's body, if they have normal immune systems, will eventually wake up and go, oh, there's a virus here, and they'll clear the virus. Typically, they say in 2 years, but I've had ones on fingers or feet that lasted longer than that. So I'm sitting there going, oh, fuck, I may not be having sex for, several years here. This could really put a crimp in my love life.
Right,
and
because you're obviously more likely
I don't have that much left, so...
Because you're obviously more likely to spread it when you have the wart showing. So that's what you're saying, is that if you want to not have sex at the risk of, not because you don't want to spread it, because you can't, like you said, you can't use a condom to cover them up.
Right, because it was right at the base, right at the joint with my body, and a little bit on the body, a little bit on the penis, and so there's no way you're going to cover that with a condom. So
to
avoid causing problems for partners, I would pretty much have to not have sex. However, spoiler, there's a happy ending, I think, on this, because...
Well, you didn't have the cancer-causing strain
Yes.
that you know of, so that's a happy ending.
That's a big happy ending. Yep.
It doesn't appear that you've spread it to any of your partners that you know of.
As far as I know,
no. I have no symptoms. Listen, here's the thing: if it has happened, it can take 20 years for even warts to show up. So there's no way to know at all.
Except. Typically, I think the visible warts will develop in 4 weeks to 8 months or so.
But it can also lie dormant for years before it pops out. So I mean,
you don't really know.
And so that's why even like you just said, you're afraid of spreading them, because we are spreading it without knowing whether we have it or not all the time.
Yeah.
This man is such a condom user. I mean, he's like militant about it, which is super healthy and great. And so I'm shocked, quite frankly. But this could have been something that happened many, many years ago. There's just no way to know.
But also, I mean, it's in a place that isn't covered by the condom. Right. So even if I was using a condom, that's not going to stop it.
There's just no way to know.
This would have occurred.
Yeah.
And it seems that warts are not super easy to spread, despite the fact that so many people have them. I found a bit of research when I was looking up all this, where someone did a study. They looked at, somewhere between 1 and 200, I think, couples, college-age couples, where one of the partners had warts and the other one didn't. And they followed them for like 6 months. And in that 6 months, only 20%, so 1 in 5 of the couples transferred the warts to the partner that didn't have them. And that was people who were having sex on an average 4 times a week, and half of them weren't using condoms. So 1 in 5 in 6 months with relatively little, precautions. But on the other hand, if it can take up to 8 months to show up, maybe more of them did spread it, but it just hasn't shown up yet. Who knows?
Right.
Or maybe it's never going to show up at all.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like HPV is cuckoo that way. There are so many different strains of it that you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
But so
so you can't just, here's the other thing. You can just, you can fuck with the condom on thinking that but if you're going to give somebody a blowjob without a condom, you're exposing yourself to it.
Yep. And genital wart strains can infect you in the mucous membranes of your mouth and throat.
Men get it in their throats is by going down on women who have the virus.
So it's one of the main factors in throat cancer for men is HPV infection.
Yeah. Right. And so then let's talk about getting vaccinated.
Vaccinated, yes.
So my daughter actually, her pediatrician was way ahead of her time. And when my daughter was 11, she said, this new thing has just come out and it's called Gardasil. And I was like, yes, I've read about it. Let's do it. So she was on the very first version of Gardasil. And then nobody ever talked about getting their sons vaccinated. And then after my now ex-husband got cancer, that oncologist pulled me aside and said, if you have a son, have your kids gotten vaccinated? And I said, yeah, my daughter did. And he said, this is what's going to happen if your son doesn't get vaccinated. This could very well happen to him as well. And as much as I now dislike that man, that was the most horrific thing to have to go through. Half of those people never actually end up like learning how to chew and swallow again. And they're on a feeding tube for the rest of their lives. If they get cured.
Your ex-husband, not the doctor.
Yes, no. But so the doctor said, get your son vaccinated too. So then he was on the next version of it, which was just 2 shots. And I think that it's super, super important. You do not want to see your son go through what my ex-husband went through.
Yeah. Both.
It was, crazy. 3 forms of radiation every single day, every other week. Like 3 different forms of chemotherapy all day, round the clock, every other week for a full week. And then he'd be off for a week. He was bald and skinny and constipated from the pain medication. I mean, it was just hell. He had to force himself to eat, and it was painful to swallow. And, he was a trooper through it all. He really was. He just made himself do it. But so many other people didn't, and it's not something you would want anybody, even your worst enemy, to go through. So I do say, get your sons and daughters vaccinated. Get them vaccinated. Period.
And both my kids have been vaccinated fully, and I might want to go back and see when it was done, because the original Gardasil only covered the two main cancer-causing strains, and then they came up with the second version, which covered 4 strains, I think, that included the 2 main wart-causing ones, and the current version of Gardasil covers 9 strains. So
I mean, I guess, one thing, circling back to the sort of what you went through, Mark, which is, right, putting aside the potential that HPV can lead to certain types of cancers, right?
Yep.
In your case, and this is much what we heard when we talked with Michelle in Orlando, that they had basically no symptoms, right? You had symptoms, but you said, like, you went in, you had them looked at, and then it was weeks or months later where you're like, oh, I guess those are still, like, so.
It's not like it was painful or itchy or anything.
No, not
exactly,
painful, not really very noticeable. They were just like, literally, like, they looked like razor bumps, but not even red. They were just kind of like flesh-colored. And then there was a cluster of 3 or 4 of them that started getting a little, kind of grouping together and getting bigger. And I was like, it doesn't look like razor bump, and they shouldn't be here after this amount of time anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Even
and
if
so,
I'm continually re-irritating them, they shouldn't be there.
Right. And I think where my point was, like, the impact on your life at, like, in terms of being a healthy human, like, it was negligible.
Yeah,
right?
no impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
The only impact is not wanting to spread this inconvenience to other people. But as far as actual, disrupting my life, nothing. Now, I understand from the research I've done, I understand some people can get really big warts from this. But in my case, it was nothing like that. And I got derailed a bit there, but seems to be a happy ending to this, in that my doctor, one of the possible treatments was something called imiquimod 5% cream. It's something that it's not exactly an antiviral, but it activates, like, tumor necrosis factors and various other parts of your immune system, and it gets them to notice the warts, apparently. And looking at research on this, I found one study where they took a bunch of people, treated them with this cream, and about 50% of them had total clearing of the warts within 4 months of using the cream for 4 months, cleared it for 50% of the people. And having used it now for, a couple months or month and a half or whatever.
Has it been that long? Really?
Well, at least over a month.
Yeah.
But from about a week after our interview, whenever that was, that it seems to be working for me.
Yeah.
They're shrinking. The big group has gone away completely. The little ones are looking like they're under attack and shrinking. And so I'm hoping that within a month or so, I'll be all clear.
Awesome. I thought you were going to say that one of the side effects of the cream is it made your penis bigger, but I suppose that's good news as well, that the warts are going away.
They all swelled up down there.
So.
No, that's awesome. That's wonderful that it's working, and you haven't. It sounds like, it is a minor inconvenience. You haven't let this ruin anything.
No.
Ruin anything.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to call it ruining, but I do miss having penetrative sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
With this one. So it's not ruining. It's just, you get a little creative and other.
It's shrunk the menu a bit.
Yes.
But just think about that build up for.
That's so true, right? I mean, seriously,
right.
It'll be like, ooh, like I'm a virgin again at the age of 54.
Yes.
Well, I think it's super awesome that you came on and were willing to share that, because obviously not something that's super easy to talk about, but even more fantastic is, like, hearing it from one of your partner sides is that like her response was, first of all, is that all? And second of all, like, let's make sure it's not going to cause something worse
Yeah.
than this. And like, it's just a minor inconvenience, and now you'll carry on, and you'll be great in a month.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that one of the reasons that we wanted to come back on, and believe me, I was like, why are you even telling people this? But I think one of the reasons that I want that when he said, should we go back on? And I was like, yes, was because it should be normalized.
Yeah.
I mean, it should not be like this big,
this thing has
horrifying thing that changes your sex life forever. You know, you get the cream, you use some condoms, you just be careful for a while, and you know, whatever. Like 80% of the people that you see out at night at a club or whatever have this.
Well, no, have had it at some point in their life, or
Right.
will have it
Right.
at some point.
But I mean, it's so normal that the stigma, any stigma that is attached to it, should not exist.
Yeah.
Because it's just a, you know,
it's a minor inconvenience.
Yeah.
Is the worst.
Yeah.
Just one other thing I wanted to get in before we finish up, which
of course.
came out of the research we did, was that I did see that any sort of little tear or abrasion in your skin can make it easier to pick up warts, and that applies to shaving or waxing. So my takeaway from that is probably, if you're going to, be shaving or waxing, you might want to do it like a day or two before you're going to go to a big party or something, because give it a chance to heal up, because it's the rapidly dividing cells where it's healing that can pick up the virus more easily.
Suck it right in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Solid advice.
Yeah, no, that's
Yep.
really good advice.
So here's the one more thing that I wanted to mention is that now this guy is planning on getting Gardasil at his age, which I totally am like, why? Because even if you get the cancer-causing form of it at this age, now I've learned this now since our initial conversation where I was worried about it's going to take 20 years to develop, and you'll be like 80 years old. And, if
my dad's 94
whatever,
and doing great. I'm going for
like,
120 minimum.
But the chances of you already having those types of HPV are probably good.
I don't know.
See, so yeah.
Prior,
so it's going to cost almost $1,000.
I'm on Team Mark here.
Well, at the same time, I was like, what is the cost of the vaccine?
Right.
So the cost,
$700.
Yeah, it's going to be close to $700. So
That's not cheap.
It's not cheap. So I'm using my company's medical, flexible spending plan thing to put away money a little bit from each paycheck next year pre-tax. So I save a little bit that way, and I'll pay for it out of pocket. Because I'm too old for insurance to pay for it.
So this is why they tell you to get your kids vaccinated, but at 11 is when they're saying. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like the age.
Yeah, before they can get
before they're sexually active.
Right.
And I'm like, way too late for you.
Well, but I think just to throw this out there in terms of what the new age limit, I think they upped it last year, and I believe it is 46.
Yeah,
is the new limit.
Oh, for real? See, I did not know that.
Yeah, I knew it was up in the 40s. It's gone up quite a bit, and both men and women.
Because I got it in college, so I was in my early 20s, and back then the age limit wasn't very high.
Yeah.
They've kept increasing it.
You should probably look into getting revaccinated with the new version, because you would not be covered for as many strains if you were.
Yes, I'm realizing that as I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I may talk to my kids about that as well.
Yeah.
We learn a lot too from this.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you both again for coming on the first time and for coming back on this time, and we really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate being. Yeah, I appreciate you not thinking he's crazy.
No,
at least not
like she does.
Like I do. I'm like, oh my God. I really do think though that that everybody just needs to like. A lot of STIs are not going to be anything other than the biggest problem is going to be the stigma attached to them as opposed to actual medical problems and all of that. I think that no matter what, you protect yourself because you just don't want even a minor inconvenience. You don't want something that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. But it's also something that I think people have got to start talking about as a normal, everyday thing with sexually active adults.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because it happens.
It happens all the time. All the time.
And that's one thing I really appreciate about your podcast is that you bring that up, you know, and you talk to people about that because that helps. You're not only normalizing non-monogamy, you're normalizing, rational discussions about STIs.
2 birds, 1 stone.
Yay! That's perfect.
Well,
and I was going to say too, like we've had some requests. We've gotten emails from listeners that say we would like to hear stories of people actually handling a diagnosis of an STI. So I'm so appreciative that you're willing to come on and share because that's people want to hear that.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And thank you both again. And thank you again. You know, we can't put the information out there if you're not willing to share it. So kudos to you both. And
now we'll look all of us will look further into the Gardasil vaccine.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I had no idea about the age thing. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, thank you again. Is there any last minute things or we good?
I don't think so. I just wish I could have been at that foam party.
Hey, there'll be more.
Yeah.
We're back again.
Again.
The last time for this episode.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you and get scolded again.
I'm used to you interrupting, so now I leave space for you to interrupt.
Well, if you left space to begin with, I wouldn't have to interrupt.
Yeah, I do. That's what I was just saying.
So one thing we wanted to say, again, as always, thank you, Eliza and Mark, for coming back on, sharing a super amazing story and a vulnerable story. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. And we couldn't, and also just thank you again for coming back on and sharing the addendum to the show. So I think it was wonderful, and I really appreciate that you two were willing to talk about something that was maybe a little bit vulnerable. So,
and while we're on the topic of STIs, maybe it would be a good time to remind people that if they wanted to, they could save $10 off of 1 condoms or 10%. What am I talking about? 10% off my 1 condoms or 1 condoms using the offer code Emma. And it's not even necessarily an affiliate. It's just they partnered with us to give you guys 10% off.
Yes. All information on our resources page under our website, which is normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
And keep in mind, I do understand that in this case, specifically, condoms wouldn't necessarily help, but they do help protect you from a lot of other STIs.
That's true. Yes.
And the last thing I wanted to quickly mention was a note about a number that did get mentioned that I did know for a fact was not true. I mentioned that the new age for the age limit for Gardasil was 46. It is actually 45. My apologies. But also,
how dare you get that wrong?
Keep in mind that your insurance company may not cover it until that point.
Yeah.
Not that I have personal experience dealing with this bullshit, but just saying, it may be something you come across.
Yes. So talk to your doctor and also your insurance companies before trying to get the Gardasil vaccine. But I do highly recommend that you get it.
And shopping around. We've heard that depending on where you get it, it can be cheaper.
Yes,
so
yes.
Do a little comparison shopping.
Okay, next week, normal Wednesday episode, it will be Chloe and Drew, right?
It will be. That's true.
Yeah.
Unless we decide to surprise you on Monday.
That's true.
We probably won't, though.
But I'm not going to tell much about their story. Super fun people, and you'll just have to wait till next week.
All right, let's go get tested and let's go to New York City.
Okay,
Here
bye, everyone.
Here we come.
Thanks for listening.